Yeah, I want to come back to why you're in court in a minute, but let's talk a little bit about the work you've done over the years, because you started out doing work around, like you said, issues with stores charging black people more for goods or not selling them at all. Or
well, you know, like I always used to tell my students, the European finds a very, very poor person in the family and bring them over to America. First area you find is a black community, because in 5 years he has made enough money for them to move on, and they will find themselves bringing in another, because in our communities, especially poor people, they do spend.
Right, so there's real questions of accountability with all of that.
And this is true.
I have found that, and I like to tell people about this, that whenever I've talked to you over the years, you'll tell me about an issue that's coming up, and I think, well, this is really wacky, this is crazy, I don't know what you're talking about, Ms. Rice, but then it turns out 2 years later, everybody's talking about the issue that you were talking about before. Like, I remember when you first started talking about identity theft, and I thought this was, you know, kind of bonkers, and then realized, you know, that was
That's my problem.
You're ahead of your time.
I'm ahead of my time. That's why I don't make no money.
Well, so being ahead of your time, you also identified technology early on as something that really there was a big division in who had access to technology and who didn't. So can you just talk a little bit about the work you've done around AT&T and the Verizon?
Well, at that time it was New York Telephone.
New York Telephone, yeah.
And we had a lot of hearings in the 60s. And it was just the being at the hearings. And I tell us, we make a mistake by not going to the hearings, because at the hearing there's a lot of, by putting your voice there, that you can make changes. And that's what I was able to do. I always like to, when we talk about technology, I always like to give Richard Jockett, who was CEO of I don't know, New York Telephone or Bell Atlantic or whatever. But the fact that we met at these hearings, and once I began to learn how Long Island, especially parts of Long Island, was children had computers, and we didn't have anything in Harlem at that time. I just felt that, you know, you have a company, this is what we need, and you know, we had that third floor.
So what did you end
up? Questions right now about it, but it's a third floor, the technology center.
So you got them to set up a technology center with computers?
Put up in 1996. They set up the technology center. It didn't come overnight, but I think it was during the 80s that we were able to. It took them quite a while, and we had some good people. Well, I always like to say Dick Jockett was the CEO, but there was some good people also behind him, in which they continued doing it. I think I always hear that Bruce Gordon was one of the people also that was a part of it. So
what's there? You got a center that has computers for people to use and access to the internet.
And I hope that it remains there. That's one of my concerns now.
Because they're saying they're going to shut it down.
Well, I don't know. They say but I'm concerned about it.
So, you know, when someone, you know, that we work with has been doing this for so long, this kind of advocacy and activism, and really just as outspoken as you are, the question comes up: how do you?
That's the trouble.
That's the trouble.
Too outspoken.
But how do you keep doing it? You know, there's the Verizon Center is a battle that you won, right? There's other battles that you've won along the way, but a lot of battles get lost, and a lot of.
Well, you do. You don't win them all. You don't win. You know, you don't win them all, but that doesn't stop you from continuing. And I just felt, and like I always like to say, I was lucky. My daughter got married to a great guy. 52 years they've been married, and they gave me my freedom. So I really didn't have, if I got an idea, I just worked it out. And I think that's what also with direct deposit was the fact that, not that I was that much against direct deposit, but the reason I was against direct deposit because black people couldn't borrow money.
Well, let's just stop for a second and explain what you're talking about here. So when you're talking about the direct deposit, you mean from the late 1990s when the Treasury Department said everybody who gets Social Security or veterans benefits has to, or other federal benefits, has to get them by direct deposit into a bank account.
That's right.
And
You'd have
led
to
the campaign to say, wait a second.
That's right.
Not everybody has a bank account. Not
That's
all
right.
seniors have access to banks.
That's
and
right.
why should we force on them this direct deposit? And so you were
Well, I wasn't that nice.
You weren't nice. I can't imagine.
No,
what did you do?
At the hearings, I would let them know that there was no reason for black people to put their money, their checks in the bank, to give that bank float.
Right.
Which that money wasn't coming into our community, wasn't benefiting us, helping to help build them prisons for African Americans upstate. So that's what I was concerned about. How much money they would get as a float.
Because they would take the direct deposit each month
and our
then
community
invest it overnight and make a lot of money.
And you can see that because lots of people in the private houses, they couldn't borrow money.
So
and
why
in
should
some
they
instances still can't.
So, you know, as a result of that campaign, the Treasury Department backed off and said, okay.
Well, we had hearings, and that's why I would like to tell people, it's very important to be at those hearings. We had hearings. I was able to express that at the hearings.
Remember Senator D'Amato was there, remember? It was at Bowling Green, 1990.
Yeah, and what happened, they listened. Can you imagine having the Treasury of the United States making changes because on account of what came through? And I think it's important, and I'm saying here, very important to attend those hearings. You can make the difference. That's what I like to say.
And call it like it is, and speak out. And
that's the most important thing.
Well, they ended up making direct deposit optional. And they said, you know what?
That's right.
We've changed our minds. We've heard from people, and
that's right.
You won awards as a result of that activism.
They made me the Woman of the Year. 1999, I was made the Woman of the Year by
the National Consumer Advocates.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you've won so many awards. You've won the AT&T Award for Outstanding Community Service.
Yeah.
The Sojourner Truth Award. The Ophelia DeVore Award for Community Service. The Con Ed Better Business Award. The Older Women's League Award. The New York Urban League's Frederick Douglass Award for Community Service. Yeah. Awards from AARP and certainly from our organization. We at NEDAP even have an award named for you, the Florence M. Rice Award, which we gave last year to a young advocate, an emerging advocate who works in Bushwick, Brooklyn.
Well, that's so important. I just wish I had a whole lot of young people, you know, behind me. But when you can't afford to pay anybody, you don't get that kind of support. So.
Well, I think that every time that I talk to you, and it's been many times over the years, you talk about the need for young people to get involved in this kind of work.
Right.
So how would you encourage young people to think, about, economic justice work and fighting economic discrimination and why that's important?
I would like to see it done in the schools. I'd like to see consumer education. I like to call consumer education skills for life. So therefore, you come up with the skills. You know how to, first thing, handle your own business. Most people don't. If I'd have known how to handle my own business, I wouldn't be in court today. But what I'm concerned about is the fact that people have to be known, informed, and certainly, I think, I say this, I think the worst system is the housing court system. But in saying that, I think it's important that people know how to handle their own personal business.
So handle their own personal business?
And that's in everything. Whatever they're going to do, whatever they're going to buy, whatever, that they know how to handle themselves. They know the question, and knowing the questions to have. Consumer education helps them to do that.
And how do you encourage people who have strong views about things but are scared to speak out?
Well, the sad thing about it appears that everybody today is very passive. They're scared. I know with the senior citizens that they're very passive. They don't want to cause no trouble, and not only that, I think the whole society is passive because so much is going on today. People should be rising up, but it appears that they're not.